The pale glow of the server status monitor was the only light in my downtown office just past 11 on the night of December 19th. I'd been finalizing a complex security patch when my phone vibrated against the cool glass of my desk, a sharp, insistent buzz that broke the sterile quiet. Alert. Motion detected. Server room. West Wing. I didn't panic. Panic is for clients who ignore two-factor authentication. I set down my soldering iron, picked up my phone, and opened the security portal for the family home with the same focused calm I use to debug a kernel. The 4K night vision footage loaded instantly, showing the server room I'd custom built in my parents' converted wine cellar. Every detail crisp in monochrome. The specialized acoustic paneling, the floor-to-ceiling server racks, the precisely managed temperature control. And there, standing in front of my primary Nexus Systems server unit, wine glasses catching the overhead LED strips like crystalline threats, were my younger sister Kira and her fiancé Bryce. I increased the volume on the surveillance mic. Their voices came through with perfect clarity. "It's a gold mine," Bryce said, gesturing grandly at the racks. His venture capital swagger was fully deployed, the same body language he probably used to pitch worthless apps to naive investors. The overseas tech conglomerate lands on the morning of the 21st, 10 o'clock sharp. They need to dump the budget before the fiscal year ends, so they're desperate to close before Christmas. Once they see this infrastructure, this level of bespoke smart home automation, they'll tack on an extra $350,000 to the offer immediately. He took a long sip of wine, likely from my father's ridiculously expensive cellar collection. "After the ink dries, we kick AJ to the curb. By then, it's a done deal." Kira giggled that high-pitched, manic laugh she'd perfected for her luxury living vlogs. "She's gonna lose her mind, but who cares? It's mom and dad's deed. Anything attached to the house is a fixture, right? That's what you said." "Exactly. Hardwired systems become real estate. It's basic property law." My heart rate actually slowed down. I took a screenshot of Bryce's smug face next to my asset, then another of Kira's performed joy. I downloaded the full video file and immediately encrypted and uploaded it to 3 separate offshore cloud storage accounts. I looked at the timestamp. They wanted to sell my assets at 10 a.m. on the 21st. Too bad my primary staging site was scheduled for an emergency decommissioning at 9:45 a.m. I am 34 years old. I own Nexus Systems, a highly specialized software architecture firm that designs and installs bespoke security and automation networks for ultra-high net worth individuals and corporate black sites. My family sees me as a glorified IT technician. They have never understood that 4 years ago, when my father called me into his study with that particular tone, the one that meant he was about to ask for something while pretending it was for my benefit, I signed a contract. A real, ironclad, legally binding beta site and consignment agreement drafted by my corporate attorney, David Ross. The terms were simple. I would invest $280,000 of my own capital to transform their outdated, embarrassing house into what the contract called a fully operational smart home showroom facility. They would get a state-of-the-art living space for free, complete with the best automation money could buy. I would get a venue to bring VIP clients, a secure, fully functional site where CEOs and intelligence contractors could walk through a live, customized automation network and see exactly what they were buying, rather than squinting at architectural renderings and imagining what a private server might look like behind a fake wall. For 10 years, I would maintain, update, and monitor the property at no cost to them. In exchange, I retained full ownership of all proprietary network hardware, specialized server racks, and custom-designed system components installed on the property, with the explicit right to remove said inventory should the agreement be terminated early or should asset security be compromised. My father had signed it while attempting to mute a football game. My mother had signed it without reading past the first paragraph, distracted by a celebrity gossip magazine. They thought they were getting free high-tech upgrades from their oldest daughter. I was building a $280,000 investment portfolio disguised as a convenient family favor. The memory surfaced with bitter clarity. 36 hours ago, at Kira's engagement party, the house glowing with synthetic candlelight and the air thick with the forced cheer of people pretending to care, Bryce had cornered me near the portable bar, shoving a stack of papers into my hands. The music pounded from the speakers, some awful EDM track Kira insisted on, and guests laughed too loudly over their fourth glasses of Prosecco. "Just a compliance waiver for the new smart fridge, AJ," he'd yelled over the noise, his breath sharp with cheap liquor. "Your signature on the third page. Quick favor for your sister's fiancé." I'd been distracted, exhausted. I'd spent that morning installing a complex biometric security system for a client in Monaco via remote, and my eyes ached. I took the pen he offered. "Here?" I asked, pointing to a line flagged with a pink sticky note. "Perfect. You're a lifesaver." I signed because they were family, because that's what I was supposed to do. Now, sitting in my apartment with the video evidence glowing on my screen, I understood. Buried somewhere in that stack, probably in the middle, camouflaged by appliance compliance forms and municipal code reviews, had been a release waiver, something that said I acknowledged the upcoming sale, something that said I released any claim to proprietary network systems installed on the property, something that in Bryce's tiny predatory mind would make stealing $280,000 of my work legally defensible. He'd underestimated two things. First, I don't sign contracts without verifying them, even at parties, even when I'm tired. That waiver, whatever it said, would have had my signature on the wrong line, or the wrong date, or some other fatal defect that I'd engineered instinctively, even in my exhaustion. Second, I didn't need a single signature on a waiver to protect my assets. I already had a bulletproof contract. I didn't call Kira to scream. That's what the unstable older sister would do, the role they'd been trying to cast me in since we were children. The one who was too focused, too intense, who couldn't handle a simple conversation. Instead, I scrolled through my contacts and called David Ross. He answered on the second ring. David always answered. That's why his hourly rate made my CFO wince. "AJ, it's 11 at night. This better be a merger or an indictment." "David," I said, my voice level, almost pleasant. "Remember that beta site and consignment agreement we drafted for the Jensen Estate showroom? The one my parents signed without reading? The one with the chattel by design clause? Yes. I need you to prepare the asset recovery protocols. We have 35 hours. There was a pause. Then, with the tone of a man who just realized his evening was about to become far more interesting, he asked, "What happened?" "They're selling the house on December 20th at 10 a.m. Tech conglomerate. Cash deal. They're trying to include my proprietary network systems as part of the real estate to inflate the price." "Can you prove it?" "I have a video confession. High definition, time-stamped." David laughed, a short, sharp sound like the click of a safety being released. "Forward everything. I'll have the documentation ready by 8 a.m. AJ. Yes? This is going to be beautiful." I hung up and returned to the security footage. I watched the video 3 more times, memorizing every word, every gesture. Kira's careless laugh, Bryce's predatory grin. By the 4th viewing, I felt nothing at all. That's when I knew I was ready. Dawn broke over the city on December 20th with the bruising, ice-blue light, turning the frost on my office windows into sheets of burning crystal. I'd been awake for hours, sitting at my desk with my laptop open, surrounded by 4 years' worth of hardware installation manifests, proprietary software licenses, and component serial numbers. By the time I walked into David's office shortly after 8, the city was fully awake, completely unaware of the precise legal war I was about to launch. David's office occupied the 42nd floor of a glass tower downtown, the kind of place where the receptionist desk cost more than a high-end server and the coffee was from beans that had been aged in whiskey barrels or some equally ridiculous provenance. David himself was 55, gray-haired, and possessed the particular smile of a man who genuinely enjoyed dismantling opponents in court. He was smiling now. "You weren't exaggerating," he said, gesturing to the screen where my security footage played on loop. This is prosecutorial-grade evidence. Your brother-in-law-to-be is a complete liability. He's a VC associate, I said, settling into the leather chair across from his desk. He understands property law the way a script kiddie understands cybersecurity, enough to be arrogant and dangerous. Walk me through the technical chattel angle again. This is where we win. I opened my laptop and pulled up the technical diagrams, cross-sections of the server racks, photos of the custom-cut floor panels, and certification documents from my hardware engineering firm. Bryce's entire strategy relies on the legal principle of fixtures. In property law, anything permanently attached to the land, anything that's hardwired into the building's permanent infrastructure, becomes part of the real estate. If I had used standard wiring and built the racks directly into the wall studs, he'd be right. They'd belong to whoever holds the deed. But I didn't. No, David prompted, already knowing the answer. Every single high-value, high-end component in that house, the servers, the custom biometrics, the advanced power distribution units, is installed inside what we call proprietary, self-contained server furniture. They are custom-fabricated aluminum racks that use specialized quick disconnect power and data couplers that interface with a conduit but are not physically wired into the house's permanent electrical system. To the naked eye, it looks like a permanent installation. Underneath, every piece of hardware is essentially a massive, highly specific, removable component. I rotated the diagram on screen, showing the non-standard interface points. Biologically and legally, I continued, using a phrase David loved, their roots, their power and data connections have never touched my parents' property in a permanent way. The racks aren't fixtures. They're chattel, movable personal property consigned to the estate under a temporary display agreement. They belong to Nexus Systems. They always have. David leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. And you can prove this? I have installation records, purchase receipts, and third-party certification from the engineering firm that built the racks. Every server, every custom switch, every proprietary network distribution panel, it's all documented as a Nexus Systems inventory with serial numbers. What about the specialized wiring in the walls? That's standard Cat7 conduit and fiber optic cabling, which is a fixture and will remain, but the proprietary removable terminations and the custom server equipment that makes it valuable are mine. Without my custom server brains, that house is instantly dumb again. The lighting systems revert to standard switches, the security cameras are just expensive plastic. He was grinning now, the predator scenting blood. You magnificent, hyper-thorough architect. I prefer thorough. We spent the next hour reviewing the contract I'd signed with my father 4 years ago. David had drafted it himself, and reading it now was like watching a master chess player explain why they'd sacrificed a pawn 12 moves earlier. Clause 7. Ownership and retrieval. Nexus Systems retains full ownership of all proprietary server equipment, specialized furniture, and custom hardware consigned to the property for display purposes. Said materials remain the exclusive property of Nexus Systems and may be removed at any time should the client terminate the agreement or should asset security be compromised. Clause 12. Acceleration clause. In the event the agreement is terminated prior to the completion of the 10-year term, all waived monitoring and maintenance fees shall become immediately due and payable. Monthly service schedule attached to Appendix C. I'd never charged my parents service fees. For 4 years, I donated approximately 15 hours per week, keeping that network immaculate, running diagnostics, patching software, and replacing obsolete components. The contract specified this would be provided free of charge for 10 years unless they broke the contract early. Pull up Appendix C, David commanded. I did. The service fee schedule appeared on screen. $1,200 per month, escalating by 3% annually for inflation. 48 months at an average of $1,250 per month, approximately $60,000 in waived fees. Add decommissioning costs, David said quietly. Specialized server relocation crew, transport, insurance, and the necessity of canceling client appointments to handle this emergency. Another $25,000, easy. Then penalties for breach of contract, disrupting my beta site. Let's be conservative and say $5,000. Round it to $85,000, David said, pulling out a legal pad and beginning to draft. If they don't pay within 30 days, you file a mechanics lien against the property. The house becomes legally frozen. They can't sell it, can't refinance it, can't transfer the deed. It stays on public record like a digital scarlet letter until they pay every cent. I watched him write, his fountain pen scratching across the expensive paper. David, I said quietly, Bryce and Kira think they're going to kick me to the curb and pocket $350,000 of my work. My parents are letting it happen. They're complicit. They didn't even warn me. David stopped writing and looked up. His expression was gentle, almost fatherly. AJ, this isn't revenge. This is corporate asset protection. You invested $280,000 and 4 years of highly skilled labor. They are attempting to commit premeditated corporate theft. What you're doing, taking back your property, is the most rational, professional response possible. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I nodded, the tightness in my throat easing slightly. When do you want to move? He asked. Tomorrow morning, 9:45 a.m. I want to be pulling out of the driveway just as the tech conglomerate's black sedans are pulling in. That afternoon, I returned to Nexus Systems' main facility, a high-security compound in the industrial district, with a secured warehouse, IT labs, and a staff of 15 specialized architects and security engineers. These people weren't employees. They were certified server technicians, network engineers who understood system failure with absolute clarity, and equipment operators who could move a $50,000 rack with 2 inches of clearance without scratching the casing. They were loyal to me because I paid them exceptionally well, treated them with respect, and never asked them to compromise a security protocol. I gathered the senior crew in the main office. Emergency decommissioning and asset retrieval. Site, Jensen State. Time, tomorrow morning, 9:45 a.m. We are pulling everything, all proprietary racks, all Nexus components, full asset recovery. Maya, my logistics lead, a woman who could calculate server load and truck weight faster than a computer, raised an eyebrow. Your family's place? Trying to sell the house with our inventory listed as part of the property value. She nodded slowly. We'll need the temperature-controlled vans and the specialized liftgate trucks, and a dozen rolling dollies. I want every available temperature-controlled van and every piece of extraction equipment we own. I want it to look like a precise, high-end server relocation operation. Maya was already pulling up schedules on her tablet. We'll need to cancel the Goldman install. Cancel it. Tell them we'll comp them 50% on the final bill for the inconvenience. AJ, Greg, our lead technician, said carefully, if we pull the server racks, we're going to leave some significant voids in the walls and floor panels, and a lot of exposed, empty conduit ports. I know. The house is going to look surgically stripped. I'm counting on it. Understanding dawned on their faces. Greg smiled, slow and dark. How long do we have? He asked. 16 hours. Then we'd better start pre-staging. By evening, every piece of equipment had been inspected, fueled, and staged in the secured warehouse yard. The crew had run through the extraction sequence twice. We'd prepared specialized padding, rigging, and climate control units for the servers, assets worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. I stood in the equipment yard as the sun set, watching my team work with the quiet, focused precision of a surgical unit preparing for a complex operation. My phone rang. Mom appeared on the screen. I answered. AJ, honey. Her voice was sickly sweet, the tone she used when she wanted me to fix a broken vacuum or update her computer. Can you come by early tomorrow, around 9? Bryce has some friends coming over to see the house. Maybe you could check the system, make sure the network's running perfectly for your system. Friends, not buyers, not investors. She was lying, and she expected me to show up and play the helpful daughter one last time to make their stolen network look perfect for the people who would help them profit from my work. That lie killed the last ember of misplaced guilt I'd been nursing. Don't worry, Mom, I said, my voice warm and guileless. By tomorrow morning, the network will look exactly like it's supposed to. Oh, wonderful. You're such a good daughter. I don't know what we'd do without you. I hung up without saying goodbye. Then I returned to my office, where David had emailed the final documentation. I printed everything: the consignment agreement, the engineering certifications, the maintenance fee invoice, $85,000 in bold red ink at the bottom. I organized it all into a 3-ring binder with colored tabs: legal, professional, irrefutable. Then I printed one more thing: a simple company directive on Nexus Systems letterhead. Asset security compromised. Immediate retrieval authorized. I signed it, dated it December 20th, and placed it in the front of the binder. Tomorrow morning, I wouldn't be the hurt daughter, the betrayed sister, the underestimated eldest child. I would be the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company recovering stolen proprietary property. Sleep was a ghost that refused to visit that night, but not because of anxiety. My mind was simply too active, running through logistics, reviewing contingencies, anticipating interference. By the time my alarm went off at 5:30 on the morning of December 21st, I'd already been awake for an hour, watching the winter dawn turn my apartment windows from black to gray to pale gold. I dressed carefully: practical work boots, dark tactical cargo pants, a Nexus Systems jacket with the company logo embroidered over the heart. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw what I needed to see: not a daughter, but a professional handling a high-stakes business matter. By 7 a.m., I was at the warehouse where the crew had already assembled, quiet and focused. Greg handed me a travel mug of black coffee without a word, the gesture of someone who understood that some mornings required silence instead of sympathy. We went through the plan one final time. The convoy would consist of 3 specialized server relocation trucks, 2 unmarked flatbeds for the custom racks, 1 climate-controlled van for the most sensitive processors, and my personal SUV. We'd stage down the street at 9:30 a.m. At my signal, we'd enter the property and begin the decommissioning sequence. Server racks first, then the proprietary biometric security panels, then the distribution units. Estimated time: 60 minutes for full asset recovery and packing. Remember, I told them, my voice cutting through the pre-dawn air, we are not destroying property. We are removing inventory. Everything we take belongs to Nexus Systems, clearly identified by serial number. Everything we leave behind belongs to the property owner. Clear. 15 voices answered in unison. Then let's go get our hardware. The convoy rolled out at 9 a.m., a silent, powerful procession of industrial vehicles that turned heads on the highway. I drove at the front in my SUV, watching in the rearview mirror as 5 massive, nondescript trucks followed me through morning traffic like a steel and chrome parade. We reached my parents' neighborhood, an affluent, semi-rural area where the houses were large, older legacy properties priced in the millions, owned by people who equated wealth with moral superiority. I pulled onto a side street with clear sight lines to my parents' driveway and killed the engine. Behind me, the convoy went silent. Maya climbed down from the lead truck and walked up to my window. We wait. We wait. I pulled out my phone and opened a notes app where I'd been documenting everything: the timestamps, the video footage, the conversations. Documentation is armor. Evidence is power. At 9:47 a.m., movement caught my eye. A convoy of black, late-model sedans and a sleek, tinted luxury van turned onto the street. The vehicles moved with the unhurried, gravitational confidence of serious money. I raised my binoculars. Through the magnified lenses, I watched the cars pull into the circular driveway of my parents' estate. Doors opened. Men and a few women in impeccably tailored suits emerged, the overseas tech conglomerate. They moved like people accustomed to acquiring things: companies, intellectual property, infrastructure. Bryce appeared at the front door, grinning so wide I could see the flash of his teeth from 200 yards away. He was wearing a new, overly expensive 3-piece suit, probably bought specifically for this meeting. Kira stood beside him in a designer dress, her practiced influencer smile locked in place. My father appeared next, then my mother, both dressed like they were attending a country club gala rather than conducting a transaction based on deception. I watched Bryce gesture toward the house, saw the investors follow him through the front door. In moments, they'd be in the West Wing, admiring the complex network display, calculating how much extra they'd pay for this level of proprietary technology, believing it came with the house, I checked my watch. 9:55 a.m. I picked up my radio. All units, this is AJ. Execute Plan Alpha. Move out. Behind me, 5 diesel engines roared to life. The sound was magnificent. Thunder and mechanical form. The deep bass rumble of industrial power awakening. I led the convoy around the corner, and we rolled up to the estate like a surgical strike arriving to reclaim occupied technology. The lead truck backed through the open gate at exactly 9:58 a.m., its warning beeper cutting through the morning air like an alarm siren. I saw Bryce's head snap around, saw his expression cycle through confusion, recognition, and then pure, crystallized horror. He started running toward the driveway. I stepped out of my SUV and walked calmly toward the house, carrying the 3-ring binder under my arm. Behind me, my crew deployed with practiced efficiency. Greg coordinating equipment placement, Maya managing the floor crew, specialized technicians laying down protective floor runners. I found the group in the West Wing, in the large living area adjacent to the server room. The investors stood around a bespoke console I had installed, admiring the network display screens. Bryce reached me just as I entered through the main door. His face had gone pale, his expensive suit already rumpled from the sprint. AJ, what are you? You can't. We have clients here. I didn't look at him. Instead, I walked past him toward the group of investors who had turned to watch this unexpected development with the detached interest of people accustomed to reality occasionally diverging from their expectations. I raised my voice slightly, professional and clear. Good morning, gentlemen, madam. My apologies for the interruption. My name is Audrey Jensen, owner and CEO of Nexus Systems. I kept my voice professional, pleasant even. The sophisticated smart home network you are currently viewing is not part of the real estate. It consists of proprietary hardware owned by my company and consigned to this property under a temporary display agreement. That agreement has been terminated due to asset security concerns. This viewing is over. One of the investors, a woman with sharp eyes and the particular stillness of serious wealth, raised an eyebrow. And you are? The software architect who designed and installed everything you're looking at. The daughter of the homeowners, and the person who's about to remove $280,000 worth of company property. Bryce had recovered enough to start shouting again. This is insane. Security. Someone call the police. She's trespassing. She's destroying property. A private security guard, hired by Bryce, walked over, hand resting casually on his radio. He looked about 30, bored and clearly overpaid. Ma'am, what's going on here? I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I simply opened the binder and handed it to him, already tabbed to the relevant sections. Tab 1. Consignment agreement signed by the property owner establishing Nexus Systems ownership of all proprietary network hardware and specialized server furniture. Tab 2. Technical certification from our engineering firm confirming that all specialized components use quick disconnect non-permanent couplings, making them movable chattel rather than real estate fixtures. Tab 3. The signed letter authorizing immediate retrieval due to breach of contract. The guard read slowly, flipping between tabs. I saw his expression shift from skepticism to comprehension, to something approaching professional resignation. He closed the binder and turned to Bryce. Sir, this appears to be a civil dispute regarding ownership of specialized personal property. She has documentation proving these systems are movable company assets. I cannot intervene to stop the retrieval of documented inventory. But she's ruining the sale. That's a civil matter, sir, not a criminal one. Bryce's face cycled through several shades of red. Behind him, my mother had appeared in the hallway, her hand pressed to her mouth in horror. My father stood frozen, his expression unreadable. I turned back to the investors, who were watching this unfold with the kind of fascinated detachment people reserve for high-stakes drama that doesn't affect their bottom line. Again, my apologies for the disruption. If you're interested in the house itself, I recommend conducting your viewing after the current complications are resolved. The woman in the suit smiled, slight, knowing. I think we've seen enough, Miss Jensen. Good luck with your business. They turned and walked back toward their vehicles, moving with the unhurried grace of people for whom this inconvenience was merely an amusing anecdote. I waited until their line of black cars had cleared the gate. Then I turned to Greg and gave the signal. Decommission everything. Full asset retrieval. The crew moved like shadows. They rolled specialized carts into the server room. The proprietary floor panels were carefully lifted. Then, with a series of quick, practiced releases, the first server rack was decoupled from the conduit. It rolled silently out of the room on its industrial wheels, leaving a gaping, black void in the wall where the sophisticated display used to be. The lights in the living room flickered as the central power distribution unit went offline, then returned to a standard, basic circuit. The house was slowly, surgically, going dumb. The operation took precisely 55 minutes. The living room console was now an empty, inert plastic shell. The server room was a series of gaping holes and exposed, cut-off conduits, a digital disaster zone. Kira appeared, her face streaked with tears and rage. "AJ, please, we can talk about this. We can work something out." I didn't look at her. "There's nothing to work out. I'm taking back my property." My father crossed the empty space toward me, his voice a low, strangled rasp. "AJ, what have you done? You destroyed your sister's future? You ruined the sale? You humiliated us? I recovered company property as specified in Clause 7 of the agreement you signed 4 years ago. You tried to sell my $280,000 asset and profit by $350,000 without so much as a warning." I pulled out the manila envelope marked in red. "This is the invoice for services rendered. The acceleration clause is now active." I handed him the bill. 4 years of waived network maintenance, emergency retrieval costs, and contract penalties, $85,000. My father's eyes locked on the figure. "You're charging your own family $85,000? I'm charging a client who violated a contract and attempted corporate theft, yes." Bryce, slumped against a wall, looked up. "We would have given you a cut of the sale." "No." I heard Bryce's exact words. "Once the ink dries, we kick AJ to the curb." Kira screamed, "You were monitoring us!" "I was monitoring my assets. You were caught planning theft." My mother cried, "We can't pay this. We are family." "You have 30 days, I said, walking toward my truck. "If payment isn't received, I file a mechanic's lien against the property. The title will be frozen. You won't be able to sell or refinance until the debt is satisfied." I climbed into my SUV and led my convoy of valuable salvaged hardware out of the neighborhood. 3 months later, David confirmed they had liquidated several assets to pay the full amount. Kira's attempt at criminal vandalism on my warehouse had led to a permanent restraining order and a suspended sentence. The house was unsaleable. No buyer wanted a legacy home that was half stripped of its core infrastructure and tainted by a public lien. My family had confused love with leverage and learned that in the face of theft, I was a CEO first.